Okay, in this video, I'm going to go through what I went over for the diplomas in class yesterday, and we're going to recreate the Armour system that we created. It's going to be slightly different though. This way is a little bit better on performance, because we're not instantiating objects and destroying them. We'll just swap the objects essentially with each other. So I'll show you how I've got the scene set up. So it's the same as yesterday. I've got my player, first person controller. I've got my main camera attached to my player with my mouse look script on it. And then I've got these two just empty objects. One's called shield position and one's called helmet. So we've only got shields and helmets, but you can implement like all armor the same way, obviously. And then in the scene, I've just got these assets which I got off the asset store. So we have some party hats, got an orange one, then we've got a green one over here, and then we've got a couple of shields. So this one I've tinted the material to make it blue, and then that one's just it's normal color. And then we just have a plane for the ground, so we can run around and pick them up. But oh, also on the objects here, I've got colliders on them, and they're ticked as is trigger. And then on the player, the other thing is we've obviously got it tagged as the player, the actual player object. So at the moment, that's all we've got. That's all the scripts we've got. So we'll create the next ones. So the first thing we're going to do is create an equipment manager for the player. So that's what's going to like store what they're currently wearing and um, you know swap things out and stuff like that. So let's just click Add Component directly on the player, and we're going to create a new script called Equipment Manager. Create an add, and then that's been created. So double click on it and open it in Visual Studio. All right. So I've just realized we probably actually need to start off with the armor class, but for now, what we'll do is we will create two new variables, which will be of type transform, and one's going to be called helmet position, like so, and the next one is going to be the same thing, but called shield position, because they're the two pieces of armor that I'm working with. So we'll just save that, and we'll leave it like that for now. Actually, one other thing we'll do is we'll get rid of the void and the update and the start functions for now, because we don't need them in what we're going to do. Okay, so that's the equipment manager for now. So now what we're going to do is go back into Unity. Okay, so I'm back in Unity. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag my equipment manager into my scripts folder there. And then what we will do is we will create a new script inside the scripts folder, C# script. And I'm just going to call this Armour, like that. Alright, and now we'll open this up in Visual Studio. Okie dokie, so in here, we will get rid of the start and the update. And we're going to need two things inside this class. It's going to be pretty small. The first thing we're going to need is a variable to contain our armor data. So I'm just going to put a comment here for now and call this data, like so. And then we need the Ontrigger stay function. So we're going to use this. I'm going to auto inherit it. Where is it? Ontrigger stay. There we go. And we're going to use this to obviously detect when the player is hovering or like within pickup distance of the item. So in here, we will need to do a couple of things. The first thing we need to do is check to make sure the player is the thing that's colliding with this object. So we check the tag of the collider, which is stored as that's hitting this object, which is stored as a variable, which is just called other by default. So we want to check if it's equal to player. And then we can open our coding brackets. So then in here, so if the player is within the trigger of this object, we want to check to see if they press a certain input. So I'm going to use, oh, I'm going to use just fire1 for the default. So if that equals true, it means that they have pressed the left mouse button. This by default is mouse 0. And note that I've also used get button down rather than get button, because get button down, as it says, returns true during the frame that the user pressed down the virtual button, identified by the button name. So get button down is just consistently every frame. So aka the player's holding down the button. But here, for now, we can't actually do anything in here because we need to define a function within Equipment Manager, and that is going to rely on a struct. Actually, I think we could probably define it now that we've got Armour. Yeah, we probably can, but we'll finish up this class before we move on. So we'll just quickly leave it that like that for now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to declare a struct. So outside of the Armour class, completely outside of the Armour class. Actually, no, we'll start with the enum. What we're going to do is we're going to declare an enum. So that's sort of like a data type, a custom data type that we can define and give like each value a name, like whatever we want. So we could have an enum called colors, and then we have a bunch of different colors, kind of thing. And in this case, so to declare an enum, we go public because we want this to be visible outside of this script because we'll need to access it in our equipment manager. And then we type enum because that's what we want to declare. And we're going to call this armor type. And then we follow that with a set of coding brackets. Now within here, we declare all of our armor types, essentially. So I'm just going to write none first because it's always a good idea to have none as like a selectable option. Because then you can check if it basically equates to null kind of thing. And then in here we just need helmet and shield for now because that's the only armor that I'm going to work with for now. So underneath that, so that's our enum declared, right? We can now make variables of that type, and we can, they'll show up in the inspector as a drop-down list, and yeah, we can use that in coding as well, like compare to armor types, for instance. So now we're going to create a struct. So a struct is kind of like a class. In C#, they're very similar. You can declare functionality within structs in C#, I believe. I haven't actually, implemented that. I know I said that yesterday as well, and I still haven't tested it out. But I'm pretty sure you can. But mainly they're sort of in programming in general. They're kind of used as like they just containers for values more than anything. So you have a bunch of like variables within the struct, and whoops, dog started barking. All right, no. So what was I saying? Yeah, so you use structs in programming in general to sort of just like contain a bunch of shared data between things, and then we can make variables of that struct type. And so for instance, you could have like I think that the example on Geeks for Geeks, the website was you could have like books. If you're programming a library, you could have a struct for books, and then have like the Dewey Decimal number, the author name, the title of the book as all variables within the struct, and then you can create books of the type book and have different types of books and all that sort of stuff that way. But anyway, we'll just declare them. What we need to do is first use the public word because we want this to be public, and then we follow it with the keyword struct. So struct stands for structure as well, which is something else I should probably mention. So it's just like a data structure. So we're going to call this armor data, like that, and then open our coding brackets. So very similar to the declaration of a class, except obviously we're not, I don't think we can inherit. Structs are just like straight up definitions. So in here, so we're going to first create a variable that's going to be of type armor type. We're going to use our enum here. So we're going to have a public armor type, and we'll just call this type like that. And within structs, we can't give default values, right? You have to create an instance and then set their values. So then after that, we want a public string, and let's just, you probably want to give our armor pieces names. And then I think for the diplomas, the armor will modify how much health you have. So we'll have public int life bonus, like that. Okay, so now that we have our armor data structure defined, let's create a variable of that type. So we'll create a public armor data, and let's just call it data. So when we access it through, the armor component, it's going to appear like armor.data, and that's pretty logical naming. One thing we also have to do actually with the struct, because we want all these values to be visible inside the Unity inspector. Um, so, the inspector by default only knows how to sort of translate mono behavior stuff. So even when you're declaring like custom classes, right, outside of a mono behavior, and they don't inherit from, mono behavior at some stage, or a base class that inherits from mono behavior, that means we need to serialize it in order for it to be visible inside the Unity inspector, like you would with a private variable when we're debugging in development to track, data flow and stuff. So to do that, we do it a little bit differently for like structs and classes and interfaces and stuff. So here we go system, right? So we're accessing, the system namespace, and then we want to go serializable, and that just defines this as a serializable class, which will make it, or in this case struct, which will make it visible inside the Unity inspector. So now, if we hit, I'll finish this off before, or I'll save it even so, but we'll just quickly write our last couple of lines here, and then we'll check out what it looks like in Unity. So first thing we're going to do is I just want to print to the console, just a sort of command, and I'm going to say pick up, and then after that I want to add the name of the piece of armor that we're picking up. So remember, this is relevant to obviously whatever this script is attached to in Unity. So like all these values will be different per instance. So we're just going to print the name of this particular instance when we want to pick it up. I'm going to player presses fire. And again, we will need to do something else under here, but we need to modify the equipment manager first. So inside right here, I'm just going to say equip armor item in equipment manager, and I'll just write that as a comment. Then I'll save that, and let's go back into Unity and just set our armor items up. Okay, so we're back in Unity now. You can see, okay, my armor class is down here. It's been saved. We've got everything there. So now what we want to do is, so we'll just select our objects that have the trigger colliders on them, and we can either drag them on like so, and then we need to define the data. So this is a shield, so that's what an enum looks like once it's been defined. And notice how you're able to drop this down. That's because it's a struct, and classes work the same way with the Unity inspector. So let's call this Blue Shield of Doom, and let's give this a life bonus of like 2, right? Cool, so that's that shield set up. We don't need to do anything else to that, and let's just do the same thing for our other one. So we can also add them this way if we type armor, now that we've defined that, and this is also a shield. And let's just call this Shield of Doom, because it's normal color, and it's a bit less special, so we'll give it a life bonus of 1. Now we have our party hats. So we add the exact same thing, right? We add our party hat to it. Let me just minimize the mesh renderer there. And this is going to be a helmet instead. And let's just call this blue party hat. And this can have a life bonus of 1 as well. And let's go to our other party hat now. Oh, this has got a dinosaur on the front, so let's call it that. This is a helmet, dinosaur party hat, and this can have two as well. So our armor is defined, and now because our player is tagged as the player, right? If we hit play, right, and so actually if I just swap over to the console, so if we go over here and I press left mouse button, because we can see pick up Shield of Doom, so we know that, and this one here, pick up dinosaur party hat. So it's printing the name, so we've got that done every time I press left mouse button. Sometimes it'll print more than once because, you know, the button press might last between 2 frames or something. So we've got that. Now we need to set up our equipment manager while we're in Unity actually. So we still need to define extra functionality for this, but while we're here, we might as well just drag in the helmet position for that variable and the shield position for that variable, because that way we won't forget later on. So with all that done, let's just go back to our equipment manager here and open it up in Visual Studio again. All right, so now that we have our armor class defined, we can create our next two variables. These are just going to be private because we only want to set them within the script. So we're going to call one current helmet, and they're going to be of type armor. This one will be current shield, like so. Now we're going to need a few functions here. The first thing we'll do is we'll just set up the first function, or the function that we need to access here so we can finish this script and then we don't have to worry about this. So down here, I'm going to declare a public void because this needs to be accessed from outside of this class by the armor class. So it needs to be public, and it doesn't need to return anything, which is why it's a void, as you guys know, being diplomas. And so we'll call this equip armor item, or we can just call it equip armor, right? Now this is going to take a parameter of type armor. And it's going to be obviously the armor that we want to equip. And let's just call this armor, like so, right? So that's our local name for it with, you know, whatever armor gets passed to this function. And then we'll open our coding brackets. So in here, what we need to do is check what type of armor is being passed to us, and then we're going to have basically different functions, you know, depending on what is being passed. So we could say if, okay, so we need to access the armor that's being passed to us, and we want to access its data, right? And within that data, we want to figure out what type it is. So that's the enum that we declared. As you can see, if you hover over it, armor type. And then we want to compare that to, we just want to see what armor type it is. So we'll access armor type, then put a dot, and let's check for the helmet first. Okay. So if it's a helmet, we'll just say equip helmet as a comment. And then here, we're going to use an else if statement. And we can actually just copy that and change this to shield. So if it's a shield, we want to equip shield. All right, so with that defined, let's just go back over to armor. And this comment here, what we're going to do is we're going to say other.getComponent, right? And we're going to grab the equipment. So we're accessing a component from the player, and we want the equipment manager. Then within that, we want the equip armor function. And in here, we'll just type this. So because this is in armor, this just refers to, you know, this instance of armor, essentially. So whatever instance of the script is actually, being triggered. So we'll make sure you save that script, get rid of the little asterisk there by going Control S, and that's that script done. That's all we need to do for our armor here. Now, over here, so we actually need to find a couple of functions. Let's go down here and create a couple of private functions, and they're going to be voids. Now, this one is going to be called setHelmet, and it's going to take an armor, and we'll call it helmet for the sake of readability. Should make it clear. So we can send any armor to this function, but we're assuming it's a helmet, so we're going to call it helmet. But just in case, we should probably perform a check in here, just in case it's not a helmet. So, because you could potentially call set helmet and send it the wrong piece of armor or something like that. Although we are performing that check here, so as long as we don't access this function outside of this function here, we should be fine. So in here, what we want to do is first we want to check if we are actually wearing a helmet. So if current helmet is not equal to null, so if we're not wearing a helmet, if we are wearing a helmet, in other words, what we want to do is spawn that spawn currently worn helmet back in the world, right? And we'll create a function for that in just a second, but we'll finish writing this one first. So once it's checked that, the function we write here is going to, swap it back into the world essentially so that we're not wearing anything. So after we're not wearing anything, we're going to do a couple of things. And of course, if we're not wearing anything, then it's going to skip this completely. So we just want to say current helmet is equal to the helmet that's being passed, right? Then after that, we actually need to set the position and rotation and all the, positional coordinates of it. So first we're going to set the position. We'll say current helmet dot transform dot position, because we've just set current helmet equal to the helmet being passed to us. And we're going to set that to this helmet position. So we'll say helmet position dot position. Now we can access dot position directly because this is of type transform, so we'll close that off. Then we'll do the rotation, so we'll say current helmet dot transform dot rotation. Now this is of type armor, so we have to access the transform from it in order to do anything with it. And we're going to say that's going to be equal to helmet position dot rotation. And then we want to set the parent so that so we're resetting the position there, and then we want to basically set the parent. So if we move this helmet position, the helmet will follow. So here we say current helmet dot transform dot set parent, and then open a set of parentheses because this is a function. And then within this, we are going to set helmet position as the parent. Now the next thing we need to do, and this is very important, is we actually need to turn the collider, because we're using the same thing here, the same object, but we need to turn the collider off. Otherwise this here, Ontrigger stay, is going to run while the helmet is on our head, and it's going to try and pick up the one we're already wearing if we press left mouse button, essentially. So we'll turn the trigger off, and we can do that by accessing our current helmet, and then we'll access the get component function, like so. Then within this, we just want to grab its collider, and that'll grab whatever collider it can, whether it's a mesh collider, sphere collider, box collider, whatever. Because we're not specifying specifically which collider we need. And then we just want to say dot enabled is equal to false. Okie dokie. So then up here in this comment, where within the helmet, when we're checking if the armor being passed is of type helmet, we can say set helmet, and then we just want to pass armor to it. So the armor being passed to this function, we're going to pass on to the set helmet function. Now the next thing we need to do, so basically we do the same thing here for the shield. So I'm going to copy this function, paste it underneath. I'm going to rename the function to set shield. I'm going to rename the parameter to shield. So I'm going to go Control R twice to rename all instances of this parameter, which will rename it in the function. So it's only one other place, but still. So we'll call this shield. Hit apply. Now here first, we want to say current shield. So I'm going to highlight that and copy it. And then here, I'm going to paste it over current helmet. Wherever I see current helmet, I'm going to put current shield. This here, so for these three instances, this needs to be shield position. So I'm going to copy that and then paste it there and there. So we've set everything relevant to the shield now. So then up here, we can also go, we'll go set shield, and then we'll pass it armor, like that. So we still need something for in here. We're almost done. We just need to put something in here essentially. So what we're going to do is under here, we're going to create a new private void. This is going to be called spawn armor. And this is going to take three things because we're going to use this like dynamically. So it's going to take a piece of armor, which we'll call armor. It's going to take a vector 3, which is going to be the position, and it's going to take a quaternion, so aka a vector 4, which is going to be the rotation. So we've got three parameters that we're sending to this function here. So remember here that this function is going to spawn an object back in the world. Whatever armor we pass it, it's going to spawn back into the world, but it's going to spawn it like at this position and this rotation essentially. So what we need to do is we say, okay, for the armor being passed to us, we want to make sure that its parent is equal to null. So we go transform.setParent, and instead of giving it a value, we say null, and that'll clear its parent. Then what we want to do is we want to set its position. So we access the transform.position of the armor parameter. Whoop. And we want to set that to the position that's being set here. So we're going to say that's equal to position. The next thing we're going to do is do the same thing for the rotation. So transform.rotation is equal to rotate. Well, rotation. That there. Now remember that we also turn the collider off here. So we need to make sure we can turn that back on so we can actually pick it up again. So the last thing we're going to do here is say armor.getComponent, and we want to grab the collider. And then we are just going to set enabled to be equal to true. And so this will just refer to that specific script rather than the whole object. To turn a whole object on and off, we have to access the game object and then use the set active function. But now that we've got that done, okay, so what we do is over these comments, we make a call to the spawn armor function. So we need to send it three parameters, an armor, a vector 3, position, and a rotation. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass it current shield here because this is within the shield function. And remember, we reset current shield to the new shield after this is run, right? So at this point, it's still equal to whatever we're wearing. So we're going to send it, we're going to send it current shield. Then we're going to send it the position, because we have to send it a position, but we're going to send it the position of the armor that we're picking up. So it's going to go to the position of, the object that we're picking up, which we're sending through these parameters. So here we say shield.transform.position. And we probably also want to, and we're going to send it the rotation of this as well. So we'll say shield.transform.rotation. And what that'll do is it'll make sure that we'll provide it that the origin points of the objects are all, relative to one another kind of thing. That'll make sure that it lies flat or, takes the exact position and rotation of the object in the world space, lying down or however you've positioned the one that you're picking up, essentially. So yeah, that's that. We can copy that and then paste it over this. And of course we need, because this is within the helmet function, and you're going to get those errors because shield only exists here. So we want to set current helmet for that one, and then helmet is the one we want to put here and here. And I think that should be it. Save that, and then check armor. We're equipping. Yep. Okay, so that's all good. So I think we're ready to go back into Unity now and try it out. Okay, so we're back in Unity. We set these before we started. Well, we finished up our scripts, so make sure that the helmet position and shield position has been set in your equipment manager on your player. Make sure your player is tagged as player, and make sure obviously all your armor pieces have had their data set, and that their collider, whatever kind of collider they're using, has been set to is trigger. So you can see on the shield, I'm actually using a box collider, and on the party hat, I am using a sphere collider. And the other thing actually we need to make sure is, so make sure helmet position has been set to, wherever you want the helmets to be. My shield is shield position. I'll give these a gizmo so we can see them. And helmet position. So make sure you've set them obviously where you want the shield to, or each armor piece to actually appear. So let's hit play now and see what happens. So I'll just zoom out in the scene view so we can see what we're doing. Because I'll take the shields last because they take up my whole camera view. So let's left click and we can see that the party hat has been parented to the helmet position and set to the relevant place, and it's kept all its data, but it's just turned the collider off. So if I spam left mouse button now, and we swap over to console, you can see it's only printed once at this point, and it's not printing anymore. And let's just actually, you know what, I'm gonna Shift F, there we go. So if we go over here and pick up the shield, cool, we've got a shield now. Now I have to try and figure out where, and okay, so we want to swap. So if I go over here and press left mouse button, oh, you can see it swapped. So it's obviously put that in the exact same position. We can swap back, do that as much as we need. And I think the other party hat is somewhere over here. Oh, there it is. So if we go over here, back up a bit. There you go. That collider was really small, so it was kind of hard, but you can see now it's working correctly. So yeah, that's how you can use enums and structs, as well as create, a simple little armor system here. Obviously, you probably want to add to this the ability to probably just ditch armor, like chuck it out and stuff like that. Or there's also the drag and drop system that you need to work with. So yeah, hopefully this helps.